Welcome to Screenfish Radio. I'm so glad you could join us this week as we are talking about Barbarian, the horror film that is currently on Disney Plus after a very brief theatrical run. And I am thrilled today to have, just three wonderful people on. Yes. Catherine Erskine, Daniel Maranan, and Jason Thai. Thank you all for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
No worries.
Oh.
No problem,
The story of a young woman who discovers the rental home that she booked is already occupied by a stranger. Against her better judgment, she decides to spend the night, but soon discovers there's a lot more to fear than just an unexpected house guest. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers, and believe me, if you haven't seen the film, you need to do that before this. The less you know going in, the better. So we'll wait. Okay, are you back now? Okay, great. Now I would love to hear what you all think of Barbarian.
I mean, in 104 minutes, I'm really pleased just how much story and lore this movie had and just how effective the horror was, and in many ways that reflects like different other horror movie tropes, and I loved it. I just loved it.
Yeah, that is high praise.
It was so good.
Very cool. JT?
No, I think it was really good, and yeah, it definitely plays on like the typical horror movie trope, especially in the beginning where every step, like in the house and like proceeding for like I think a good hour, she's doing like everything like a smart person, like quote unquote smart person would do, like the viewer would do, like in that situation, and then like she's like facing obstacles on the way, and then even at one point when they're talking about like her coming over. And him, she's like, if the situation had been reversed, like I would have just like said, no, you're not coming in here. And it's like going through like the faces, or not faces, I guess the troubles that like a woman would go through in situations like this. And then more tropes. And then it was really scary, of course. It was like the scariest horror movie I've ever seen, I think.
Wow, that's a huge praise.
I think so.
The scariest horror movie you've ever seen.
Yeah, I saw it in the theaters. Maybe it's a different experience if you're just like at home, or if it's like it's super uneasy. Like the scenes where she's in the basement is like the claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just claustrophobic and that like very.
See, and I agree. I think it was scary. It had great jump scares. It had great like build up and that like aura of creepiness. I watched it on a laptop at home, but I still like silent screamed a couple times. I was texting with Steve about something and then like kind of like threw the thing out of my hands. But I thought the whole time she was being an idiot.
Really?
I was like,
really?
Okay,
wow.
So you come to this house in the middle of the night. And it's like, yeah, I get it. You're tired. You're like, I think she was being kind of smart at the beginning. Like,
lock the door and everything.
Well, in the end, she locked the door. But I'm like, you're putting yourself in just so many bad situations. Like, first of all, this guy's like, come in. And she goes in and he's offering her drinks. And I was like, smart, you're not drinking any of it. Like, good for you. But then she like goes into the back bedroom. I'm like, you're trapped. And then she goes in and goes in to have a shower. I'm like, you're trapped. So, and he was being so, like, I could see that they were trying to make it so that he was like overtly trying to be like, I'm a good guy. Like, even when he went and said, yeah, I'll show you my listing, she still went in and like trapped herself. I would have waited at the door and been like, go get your phone and come back. And when she called one hotel room and they said they were booked, and he's like, oh yeah, there's a conference. And I'm like, oh, okay, I would be checking a lot more. But she did have that like little bit of safety and kind of that stranded thing. So I thought she was a little bit dumb. I thought there was things that I would have just left. I would have been like, oh, sorry, and then like gone to like a major hotel and started calling hotels, like I probably wouldn't have come in, but he was so much trying not to be creepy that he was so creepy. Like,
Yeah.
they did that really good. Like, I didn't open it so you could see me open it because I didn't want you to think I put anything in it. So her having the room and like staying the night, I'm like, even behind a closed door, you're still kind of, I probably wouldn't have slept if I ended up staying, but it had that air of creepiness that I really liked. And I did think it was a very good scary movie. I would recommend it, especially since I thought it was going to be like a Xena warrior princess movie because of the name. And I had no idea what I was going into. On Disney Plus. I didn't really like horror movies on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Well, through Fox. Through.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes more sense. Because there was another scary movie advertised after.
Yeah.
But the dark, I could see how you would have like jumped so much in the theater. And it is kind of creepy because, to be honest, when I lived in Alberta, I was thinking about this, and I had a house in a small town, and when you went into the basement, you went like down a ladder, and then it was just all dirt.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was all dirt, and there was like rooms cut out in the dirt, like not the way they had it there, but like I had never seen anything like that before growing up in a city my whole life. So it made me think of that and like how far underneath you can tunnel.
Did you ever go to the basement?
Yeah, we had to because the hot water heater broke. And so the neighbor came in and I looked down and I was like, I'm not going down there. And then the people were like, oh, come, it's interesting. And there was like a little room that they had literally, it was all cut out of earth. There was no cement or anything. And then there was another bigger, I guess, storage area, but it was just a round circle. So then when I was alone in the house, I would put a chair on top of it because it's in the ground, like it was a hatch. Because I was so scared of it.
You're doing what the woman in the film did.
That's exactly what she did. Yeah.
Yeah, she left the door open.
She put a chair there.
She's like, oh, this is fine. It's what
Like,
you did.
On the outside, when to keep it open or to
Yes. Justin Long is the one that pulls the chair
I put
up.
the chair there to lock it closed.
Oh,
If anyone tried to climb out of it while I was alone.
You did the opposite. You were like, I'm staying in here. That's
In the house.
The reverse barbarian.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't understand, like, I thought there was like a ghostly aspect of it, but with the doors closing and locking. But I guess that wasn't true.
That was her.
Yeah.
You think so?
No, I thought it was just an old door. She was way too far into the basement to be close.
Wait. I thought you meant at night.
Though I do
Maybe
think
at the night, you're right.
because there is that early scene, you see a shadow move down the hall, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know she can leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now we know she can.
It was very ambiguous. Yeah, I don't think I had any idea where this was going to go. Even just like the trailer alone, all you got was Bill Skarsgård, the it guy, looking so untrustworthy, nice guy. And it's like, this could go anywhere. And like, I like just the many twists it came with it, because I'm watching it as a guy, and I watched it at a drive-in theater with my partner. And it's like
Fun.
the way we're perceiving how we'd be in that situation with Keith, the Bill Skarsgård's character, and I'm thinking like, wow, what a nice guy, and then she's like, I don't trust him. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. And like I think I give it high praise because it wasn't just like a really well shot horror movie, but it gave me a lot of questions, and I told Jason my thoughts. Like, there's a lot of intelligent things that came along in the writing. That's why I put it next to Get Out as well, because it's giving you like some social commentary on gender norms that actually made me think a lot about what's trying to say.
Yeah, because you're always on your guard no matter what, right? Like
from a woman's perspective.
Yeah, I think from a woman's perspective, like I would have been terrified that he was in there. I might have even like left the balcony and run and figured it out later then. But even just entering the home, I'm like, that second that door is closed,
yeah,
you're on your own. Like he can do whatever he wants to you. And clearly it's not an area that has a lot of people in it.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
when
she didn't know. She didn't know in the beginning. It was
that's
only
true, I like
after
that.
sleeping over, and she saw like how how desolate the street was. But
Yeah, I thought she was being smart when she found his license
yeah,
in the thing and took a picture. I was like, that's exactly what I would do, but I would send it to a person with my location.
mm-hmm, yeah,
Which is what a lot of I do with my friends, right? If they're going somewhere they haven't been before, like meeting up with someone they haven't been, it's like, okay, like give me the name and the location, so if anything happens.
mm-hmm, yeah, like a buddy system. That's what she was missing. She needed like a buddy system, but it's weird that the only reference we got was like she had like a toxic partner, and that kept bothering her. But I kind of wanted her to have like an actual buddy, like in horror movies, when someone's gonna go alone and they tell the friend, and then the friend comes in, and then like often time like that friend will get murdered.
Yeah.
Just because like out of curiosity they went there like just for their friend's safety, but that didn't happen.
If she had listened to that, which she did exactly what I would have done, which was run and lock the door and call the cops. But like the guy should have approached her a little gently than running up to her. Hey girlie,
Yeah,
get out of that house. Poor guy. But yeah, it was really well done, I think. That bottle, I can't get that bottle out of my mind because of the hairs that were on it, like the hairs that were on the nipple of it. And I was like,
yeah.
But yeah, again, I really like the twist that you were saying. Like it jumped from like that to like, oh, now Jason Long's in a convertible and great, we're happy, everything's bright and sunny.
Yeah.
And then jumps back to the 50s, I guess, where it all began.
It was the 80s. They mentioned the Reagan era.
Okay, yes, okay. I'm really young, so I don't know the eras, but
whatever. Born in the Reagan era anyway. That's fine.
But then how it all started and finding out that's what did it, I was like, oh, this is
good. Could I know what Steve thought about it?
No. Yeah.
No. Okay.
Okay.
He probably walked the dog halfway through.
No. I wish that you would all listen to me and say that horror movies are so much better if you just ignore the gross parts. Like that's if you just like go like this and it's great. So Kat's like, ooh, eye juice, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't see that because I saw them go like this, and I'm like, I know where this is going. No, I was genuinely impressed. I always feel like I have to say this. My hatred of horror is well documented.
So biased.
But if it's well written and has something to say, I'm always more on board. And I have to admit that for a movie that was released on Labor Day weekend, and I mean, this is so important to me. We had the opportunity to review it. Jason and I missed sending the email on time. He was going to cover it. And we were like, whatever, it's Barbarian. It's coming out long. It's fine. We missed it. No big deal. And it got all these great reviews. Why? It's like they didn't trust their own movie, because that is the worst weekend of the year. The worst film weekend box office wise.
Yeah, nobody's
Labor
home.
Day. Nobody's home. Last Cottage, prep for school. No one's ever there. That's why they have free weekend or whatever it is. They have like these super deals and stuff for like $2 movies, because no one goes to the theater. And I was really impressed. The writing of this film, I really truly did not know where it was going. The shakeup of tones, I kind of when Justin Long showed up, I'm like, okay, here comes the flashback. It wasn't a flashback. The way that they shot it changes with every story. Even to the backstory in the 80s, they're using like almost pastel colors, which I mean, Kat, you're right. Like that to me is how they would have shot the 50s. Like it's that nostalgic, soft colors. And it was like, oh, everyone's happy, do. But it was like, but the one thing I would say about this film is that it wrapped it all up. It wrapped up its mysteries awfully quickly at the end, because they said all this, and then they're like, oh, this is what it is. And it was like, oh, okay. But but it's very rare that any of these films I've seen has any genuine surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And this had genuine surprises. It was well written. Um, you know, I didn't think it was the scariest horror movie I'd ever seen, but it was the feels of it, of the, you know, they didn't need a lot of gore. I mean, they had the mother herself that was terrifying, but they didn't need a lot of gore to scare you, which I respect. They did a lot with sound and lighting, and I I actually I watched that and I was like, this really is good. Like this is well done.
Yeah.
I don't it I wouldn't say it's the best one I've ever seen, but it's certainly one of the more interesting ones I've seen in the last couple of years. I'm not gonna deny that. It was really well executed. Which I did not expect. I mean, with a title like Barbarian, I mean, it's just maybe that's it too. Like
There was no clues. Like I never heard. I didn't even know it was in theater.
oh, it was in for like a week, and then it was
That's
done.
sad. More people need to see it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, like
if they'd waited a month, it would have done much better. You know, released in October.
that movie title was so intriguing to me because I was watching Smile in the theater with some friends, and then I saw like, oh, like now showing the trailer for Barbarian, and then I'm thinking like, okay, it's like a Viking kind of thing. But then now
Yeah,
it's like
Viking.
and like when you think about other movies like Get Out, Scream, Don't Breathe, Invisible Man, you get a concept of like, okay, maybe you get a sense of where this could go. But Barbarian, you just have like no idea. All you get is like Bill Skarsgård on the trailer being really creepy and too nice, and then intercuts of a dark basement. And I like that mystery.
Well, the poster
And
is just her at the door. You seen
yeah,
the poster? It's just her opening the door. And I thought, okay, well, you know, that's a typical horror movie poster. Like, don't go in the door.
Don't do it.
don't go. No, don't go. Nope.
What do you think about the title? I mean, the title, I mean, it doesn't give anything away, but what do you think it means in this film? Who's the barbarian? What's a barbarian?
I think it's debatable, of course. You could say it's like the old guy who's in the woman, like and torturing and like having kids with them. Or you could say like the obvious answer most people would say is like the woman who was inbred.
The mother.
Yeah, the mother.
That's so funny.
She was.
You could say AJ.
I didn't even take her as a barbarian. That's so funny. I just took it as Jason Long and the old guy.
Justin Long.
Sorry, Justin Long. Sorry. My apologies, Mr. Long, if you're watching. But yeah, I guess she could have been. Well, she could have been two. Excuse me. She could have been two, I guess.
Yeah. I like love the movie that I just like delve into like research like what the heck, like why is it called Barbarian? And there's so many like play on words that you could debate like, hey, that's cute. That's
a barbarian is cute.
Cat.
Oh, the cat.
Yeah.
You could say barbarian. That's cute.
Yeah, like what is that definition of a barbarian? It's just like an outsider that just comes in just to like wreck like a society or something. And then when Jason said like, oh, it could be the father, like the guy played by Richard Brake, who's actually I like that guy. He's played side characters as the creepy dude every single time. Like I've noticed him. You could say that he was the barbarian, just causing mayhem, like in Old Town Detroit many years ago, or the mother, because just a straight up monster in a monster movie, or like AJ, like someone who's just, what I guess he's like a coercive rapist from what the character is shown to be, like a kind of like a someone who's just causing trouble for women. Or the street that the house is in, it's called Barbary, and the residents of Barber Street
really
call them barbarians.
You're right. I didn't even pick that up.
Huh. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You know, a movie's good when there's plays on multiple ways to perceive something.
I thought he was a
Yeah.
barber. That's what I thought he was. You know,
I thought this was
I
Sweeney
need
Todd.
one. I need a haircut. Yeah, no, it's. Go ahead, Kat. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, it's crazy you said that because that street was almost barbaric. Like it's down to
Yeah.
the bones. It's destroyed. It's a wasteland, basically. It's interesting.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast called Dead Meat, and I think it's hosted by this couple who used to live in Detroit, and they talked about Barbarian, and they had a little bit of a commentary on like how Detroit used to be like a great city where it's flourishing, and there's all these like industries providing a lot of jobs and money into like the economy there. And after just some things that happened there, like people started leaving and less money was going into government and less government action was being taken to take care of the city itself. And that led to just everyone always makes jokes about Detroit now. It's like, oh, it's a crappy town. You know, I don't know much about it, but then that's just like there's always a reference of like, oh, like Detroit is an unsafe place. And I think I told Jason about it, like in that podcast, a couple were saying like Detroit used to have like 1.5 million regular taxpayers like years ago, and now there's only like 500,000.
Once
And
the
it's a
auto
very
plant shut down, they all had to leave. There was no economy
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And that happens in this. I mean, I don't know about the auto plant shutting down, but he's talking to his neighbor. And he's like, "This place is going down, man. We all got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're all leaving. Are you sticking around?" And he goes, "I have nowhere else to go." And he doubles down. You know.
Oh, he had different ideas.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
And
had a
hobbies.
lucrative place there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like he could say like poverty itself is barbaric, and that it destroys livelihoods of people individually and like as a society, neighborhoods and cities. Just the concept. Like,
I was like looking up the definition for barbarian, and it said in ancient times a member of a community or tribe not belonging to one of the great civilizations, an uncultured or brutish person.
oh,
You say that's the
brutish.
city of Detroit, unbelonging, a brutish area.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember when I was in seminary way back in the day, one of the first exercises they had us do was they said, find out the meaning of the term barbarian. And it happened to be that word. And because the word is used in scripture. And if I think it was barbarian, I'm fairly certain that it was, because we all said, well, we looked it up and we're like, yeah, I mean, it just means it's a guy who comes in like a Viking and just, you know, and is brutish. But it was also interesting that the further down into the root word you got, it just means someone from the outside. I don't know how that may not apply to the film here, but I just remember like we were all sort of blown away by that because it shifts perspective. Like when we think of barbarian, we immediately get a picture of what a barbarian would be. Like Kat was saying, this is what the film's going to be about. This is the title of the film. But the root meaning of the word actually just meant somebody visiting from the outside, which I thought was interesting as well.
I think it says too, today the adjective barbaric is most commonly used to describe an act that is either brutal or cruel to the point of savagery or primitive and uncivilized, while the barbarian is the person who commits such acts. So that if you were looking at just that definition, it's the guy who fathered all of these kids.
Yeah.
Like this cycle that he was talking about, like when you multiply and multiply and multiply, like.
Yeah, that was pretty messed up.
You know, I will say, I mean, certainly that's the case. I will say one of the things I thought about this film, and I think we've seen this a few times. I know Kat's feelings on the movie Men. I think that one of the things I saw in this film, and I want to talk about Justin Long and this guy a little bit, but I feel like we've been through a wave of horror films that that speak to Me Too, and we're getting some films now that are speaking to a new world on the other side of Me Too, if that makes any sense. And I'm not making any commentary on Me Too when I say that, but I mean, this film and Men specifically, I feel like are really trying to get at men. Well, men is obviously getting at men, but trying to like, because Justin Long's character is a fascinating one. And I mean, ultimately, he's despicable and we all despise him.
Yeah.
But he's not always despicable and despising. You know,
No,
like,
he needs to meet his needs, so he'll do what he needs to meet his needs, which is exactly what he proved at the end of the movie.
yeah, yeah.
It was funny when he pushed her off, and then when she was still alive, he was like, "Oh, you slipped."
It wasn't my fault. And
That's
that's
my fault.
That's the ending. Yeah.
it literally goes back to that like rape culture for men. Like, well, it wasn't my fault. When we started, you were wanting it, or it wasn't like, it wasn't rape. Like at the beginning, she said no, sure, but she got into it. Like that really tied into why he was trying to explain away his responsibility when he
Taking
pushed
victimhood.
her off of the water tower. Like that really spoke to me a lot too, because that's what people deal with all the time. Causing yourself to double think what you thought was really going on versus am I just being, but he met his needs in both situations, and then
He gaslighted the girl.
yeah, gaslighter, both
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, his comment at the end in the bunker, I thought was really interesting. He says, "Am I a bad person or just a good person who did a bad thing?"
I think that was answered loud and clear.
Well, I think it's fair. I think it's fair. I think my question was, though, is there a difference between the two? And I mean, he's a jerk. He is ultimately gets what he deserves, and even in that moment. But there, I feel like there's these moments where we get to see him going, like, because I think he says, "I need to make this right," and then he's like, "Nope."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. I think he's just like a really immature person who didn't really take the situation seriously, and also just thought that whatever happened there with the co-star like just wasn't his fault. And like it was weird too because you see phone calls, like he's like talking to his like mom on the phone, and he just seems like a regular dude, and they play on that like a nice guy who didn't do anything, and he just like talked the girl into like having sex with him, but then like he doesn't see that underlying, like he basically just pressured her and she said yes because she felt pressured, and he just doesn't see that. And it's, or like maybe he does, like he's so self-aware that he just like rather not take responsibility, like it's weird, like him doing like this self-awareness thing to his actions. And I thought it was interesting when he goes like in that cave and meets like the father and then sees what he's done, and then he's like, oh, you're sick, like what have you done? And it's what his words there are true, because the father was an evil guy with all those like sick tapes of the victims. But then it's just like he himself too has done something very like despicable, and like sexually assaulted a woman, basically. I don't know if that's the right term, like assaulted,
Yeah,
but
he did.
in a coercive setting, like he basically did. And it's like a lesser evil, like judging like a purely evil guy.
It was like deflection. Like he he was like shaming the old guy, but he really wanted to say that to himself. I think like when people like have insecurities or whatever, they like deflect it on other people what those insecurities are. So I think he was like kind of trying to say that for himself because I think he knows what he did was wrong, but he's like in denial about it. So that's what I think.
Yeah.
See, I would
especially towards.
disagree. Go
Oh,
ahead, Jay.
I was gonna say, especially towards the end, where he's just like, "Oh, I'm a good person. I just did a bad thing." He's like trying to make it in his head right that he's still a good person, and he's separating himself from the bad deed. But then he
Yeah.
obviously his true colors are shown, where he gaslights another girl. It's like, "Oh, is it your fault? You fell." And the situation was really stressful or whatever. Yeah, that's what I think at least.
And I see it as that he is the epitome of male privilege and gaslighting and narcissism in that sense that, like, yes, okay, he seems like a good guy. He's pissed off not that this girl is making an accusation that he raped her, which it was rape, because he said, well, in the beginning, she was saying no, but then, she stopped. I'm like, yeah, that's when you go into freeze mode and you cannot move and you have tried everything that you can to get away. And now you're just there trying to survive. This is what happens to women every day in these situations where they say, well, she was saying no, but then her body reacted and she liked it, and she didn't say no throughout. It's because you've never been in a situation where, like, and God forbid anyone ever be in that situation where you have total and complete loss, not only of your safety, but of your own body, because your body is naturally reacting in a way that would say it was positive, but it's not. And he went from going, what the hell, I'm gonna, like, this, excuse my language, it's the same thing, this bitch is ruining my life. So he was more mad he was kicked off of the show. And then when he did go to Detroit and he was talking to his mom, and his mom's like, sweetie, I know you would never do this. I wish you would come and visit us. Detroit is only a 4-hour flight. And instead of saying, I'm in Detroit, it's like, yeah, I gotta go, there's a business call. And he goes straight to drinking with his friend and gets intoxicated and talks about the fact that, like, you know me, I'm a straight shooter, I go for what I want, I don't take no for an answer. And sure, she was saying no, like, literally justifying himself in that to his friend, who was basically like, well, I know what the papers are saying, but I need to hear from you that you didn't do it. And he's like, well, it started out with no's, but it ended with that, drunkenly calling a victim and leaving messages when he was told not to, and he has charges pending because he has to feel better about himself. And then saying, like, and I don't want to be that, like, feminist, like, hater, but, like, saying what everyone always says, I'm not a bad person, I just did a bad thing. Everyone does bad things. Everyone needs to take responsibility. And if you truly take that responsibility and you act on that and you create a new and healthier environment and give up your rights of feelings for someone else, that's growing. And that's the core of being a good person. Saying that to yourself to convince yourself, and then in the exact same breath of saying, I need to make this right, and going right back into that self-preservation and gaslighting someone else after you sacrificed her life. At this point, you've now moved up to throwing a girl off a water tower. And instead of saying, are you okay? Like, oh my God, he's like, I'm sorry, but you did start slipping. And for women who have been through that kind of gaslighting and that kind of abuse, it was very true to the fact that it is what happens, because it's not always screaming and punching and like getting into physical fights. A lot of it is because of that. So if you ask me, was he a good person who just did something bad? Absolutely no. He is not the barbarian, but he is a barbarian. And you're right, they look for, oh well, I'm not, it's like when you go to jail for kids who do crimes against children, but you're a murderer, and everyone kills the guy who does the crimes against children because that's way worse than what I've done. It's that justification. But I don't know, I just felt really strongly about that in the movie. Like, his character was very well done, it was very real, and it was very, I don't know, it spoke a lot about the situations like that.
I have a question to propose for you guys. Speaking on the topic of misogyny, or maybe even like unconscious misogynistic tendencies, I've heard discussions on Keith's character despite him being the best guy in the entire movie, the fact that he declared himself like old fashioned, and like I listed a bunch of things he did. Like he was very chivalrous to Tess, and like would like he basically said like, oh, like Tess, like I'm not gonna let you sleep on the couch like with a young woman like you, and offering her like a drink and helping her with her duvet and like the laundry. Like although he was a very genuine guy, from what I heard is like he basically had tendencies that are considered misogynistic. It calls back to a time where women were just treated lesser, vulnerable, and always like in need of help from a man, and it would just like it would just disregard Tess's competency to be an independent person in that situation, where like Keith could have just left Tess alone, like, all right, like you do what you want and respect that. But then instead, like he kept being pushy. And although he didn't do anything wrong, like one might make an argument that like that pushiness in men towards women that's like chivalrous is what like is like I don't know, like 1% there to causing real harm towards women, where like how someone like AJ, you know, he was probably being very chivalrous and nice to the woman that he eventually raped, but it's like that you know, the stepping stones to what causes all these like underlying issues towards women is just goes back to like those misogynistic tones, and it's what made me think, because it's like I grew up just being told just to respect women, you know, but then like we're living in a time where in some parts of the world, like opening a door for a woman is like might be considered like offensive, and it's a lot to think about as a guy, but
I don't know if opening the door for a woman is considered offensive. I think
no, it's not.
what you're talking about, though, if I'm
Yeah.
right, in this character, is somebody who insisted that he be in the position of doing these things. No, I will not allow
Yeah.
you to sleep on the couch. No, I will not allow you to do these things because that is the right thing to do. I will not allow you to do those things.
No,
I
for
think that's a
sure.
little different than opening the door for somebody, but I hear what you're saying.
No, it personally, I think it's harmless, but then it's just like some people, I guess, are going against the concept of chivalry, like nowadays, that like a woman should just be able to open the door herself, and it's a, I think it's a pretty relatively new concept that's just coming up nowadays, especially like after like the Me Too movement, of just the discussion of like the role of men and women. I don't know what you guys think. I thought Keith was a solid guy, but I just like I've heard like discussions on like even though he was a good guy, like the things, the old fashioned ideas that he does like are like symptoms to the larger issue. Yet he's not the problem, but it's like the behaviors.
Mm.
It's a subjective opinion. It's interesting. What do you guys think?
I can definitely see it that way. Like everything he was doing, he was like trying to be like, I guess, a white knight in a way, like
Yeah.
overly protective and like doing all those stereotypes and just assuming that she can't take care of herself and everything. Yeah, I get that like that.
Like you guys remember the scene where she discovers like the camera on the bed and the bucket, and then goes back to the front door and Keith is there, and then Keith just refuses to believe her. It's like, oh, like what are you talking about? It's just like not even like the benefit of the doubt. It's just like he means well, but then it comes off as like you sound crazy, and it's like you could see it when the cops do it as well. Like, oh, like there's no murderer there. You sound crazy, and it's just like you take away just the woman's voice in that situation. Like there's many times where like women in my life will say something and I'll just believe them straight up. And it's interesting that there was a time before where like men would just question women like, are you sure? And like seeing that in the movie is like pretty interesting.
You know, as the oldest person on the podcast, I say
Oh
that.
really?
Yeah, this one,
I'm so much younger, Daniel.
I will. I say that for Kat's benefit. No, you know,
This is Steve's internal misogyny coming out right now,
Yeah.
guys.
No.
I'm kidding. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say I mean, I've been through a lot the last 5-6 years, and reprocessing a lot of things, and you know, the things that we're talking about here. I mean, I look back on, you know, young Steve, and young Steve thought he was a good guy. But man, he was privileged and selfish, and acted poorly. But there was a certain, like, the type of attitude that you're talking about, Daniel, with the, you know, like, well, you know, there was just sort of this attitude, I can only say that I had, that I thought I knew better, whether it was just because I don't know whether it was masculinity or whether it was just me. I don't know.
Hmm.
Or your station, like you were a
Maybe.
white male who had a like good income household, and you were
Yeah.
part of a Christian church, which is predominantly white. So like, what are you gonna know until we get into fights every Thursday night?
Well, I think of this, and I honestly, you know, speaking to you, I'm grateful that you're still in my life. You stuck with me all these years as my friend, and that we're still having these conversations. I'm truly grateful. Because I've lost friends along the way. I've hurt people along the way.
Yeah.
And I'm just speaking personally now. This is aside from the film. But I really, you know, a film like this, the last 5 years, even I'd say last 5-6 years, I've really put myself under the microscope and been trying to own old Steve, young Steve, as and do better. And a film like this reminds me of the subtleties of these conversations. You know, there's more to it than broad strokes. And
Well,
go ahead. Sorry, somebody were gonna say something.
sorry, me?
Yeah, I thought somebody was saying something.
Oh, well, I mean, like, it's subtleties nonetheless. Like, I think the world could use a bit more Keith in their life. Like, just people who
More
are
Keith than
genuinely
Justin
there.
Long.
Yeah. But then, like, some people may disagree, but I think it's just my opinion that that it's very easy nowadays to just not trust your neighbors, and we're just in a time right now where like people are locking their doors, and that they should. But it's interesting that there was a time before, going back to the movie, in that flashback in the 80s, where people were just letting people in their lives, or like people were just like letting
Letting them
other
into their
strangers
houses.
inside their houses. And it's one of those things where it just feels like a fantasy now, and that just the time that like I'm born in, where you should just always be prepared for anything. It's I don't know how to put it, but going back to like the subtleties of behaviors of internal misogyny, I think that's a subjective opinion, and that it's an objective issue if actions occur from those misogynist like subtleties.
Maybe.
Like Keith was like he could have been a bad guy just from the things he was doing, but he clearly wasn't. And then you see AJ, he was clearly a bad guy. And the father too was the worst guy ever. And it's just one of those things of like, as a viewer, you're wondering like, how much do you really trust Keith just by what he's doing? I don't know if I'm getting to a point somewhere.
I think if like 2 points, sorry, let me make sure that I get them out. The first is I can see what they're saying about Keith. And I think you nailed it on the head, right? Like they're in society, I feel like we've seen it in a lot of ways, but any extreme is not good. Right? Like if there's extreme feminism and there's this extreme masculinity, there's the chivalry that has been lost because of it, because it's like I sometimes feel like, and I hate talking about this stuff because I just think of immediately getting blasted for it by other females, but I love chivalry. I had someone open a door for me, like make sure I like was in the car okay, and did all of those things for me. And I felt strange because it's not being done very much anymore. And it's something that just shows respect for the other person. I can be chivalrous to you and hold the door open for you sometimes if you're carrying stuff. But when people start kind of tearing that stuff down is when it all gets blurred. And I think where maybe Keith was like the little seedling of like misogyny and narcissism in the movie, and then it grew into these two other men, because like you said it exactly. I have no problem with people being chivalrous, but when you're taking someone's power away, that's exactly what you said. That's where the line gets drawn. Like, no thank you, I don't want tea. Well, I see you didn't drink the tea I made you. And forcing the whole like stay on the bed, don't stay on the bed. There's battles to be won and lost. But for women, and this is gonna sound so crazy, but I just saw Mean Girls the musical last night. And
that does sound crazy.
It was very good, but they had a really good part in it, and it talked about when all the girls were fighting and all of that stuff, that men are raised or were in the past, and I think more equity is coming in now, but men were raised to be the fighters, the aggressors, and like, you know, go for it. And women were, I was like, oh my gosh, are you just disagreeing completely? It's like,
no.
And women were the sharers and had to like, you have to think about your friends, you have to share, you have to do this. And that leads into subtle things like with Keith saying, being so kind to her. And he was like, if he was a genuine person, he maybe was a little bit awkward, but he was trying to be genuinely welcoming her. And then it comes to the part where she finally gets out of the house and she tells him all that stuff and he doesn't believe her. And he looks at her and says, well, can you at least hold the door so that I can go down and look? And every woman's head, in every girl's head, it would be like, he was so nice to me yesterday, like a feeling of almost like owing. Of like, he was so nice to me yesterday. I know in my brain that I am not going to do well and this isn't going to go well, but you know what, fine, if you want to check it out, I have to return the favor of kindness and do that, and then gets yourself screwed in the end. It's just that ingrained nature of being brought up, share, put others first in women. And it was the same thing in Mean Girls, is how it kind of like came up, which is what connects it. But that spoke volumes when you could see her internal struggle. And he was so nice yesterday. If he had been an asshole yesterday,
forget him.
Not ignored her, but was rude to her, she would have never helped him. But she owed him something as a female. And for your comment, Steve, just quickly, that's the difference that I was speaking of a barbarian or a narcissist. That guy, Justin Long.
Yeah.
Am I a bad person, or like, did I do a bad thing, or am I a bad person? Throws a girl off the water tower. You say, I did some things in my past that I'm not proud of, and I feel like I hurt people and lost them along the way, I am taking the time to internally review myself and make change, not within others and not within society, within myself, that would change me into a person that I feel like I would be. I mean, not that you shouldn't be proud of yourself, but what you were saying, like I've spent the last 5 years internally thinking. That is the difference between narcissism and like, did I do a bad thing, but I'm a good person? I would say completely. And that's a perfect example of the parallels between him and like what you're saying about life as a male in society, who does carry a lot of privilege. But maybe I'm just a loudmouth, and that's me being a female again.
I love your thoughts, Kat. It's very, very thoughtful.
I knew she'd add a lot to this conversation.
Nice.
It feels so good and like an intelligent conversation. So
right over a movie.
Yeah.
Daniel says that like he's shocked, but that's only because he's been on the others are like, oh, we've had great conversations on movies before. Daniel's like, what? It's like
I was on a separate but similar note. I just started playing Christmas music in my truck. Michael Bublé Christmas playlist. I'm getting to it. Wait.
Okay. All right.
Trust the process.
Reel it in.
Michael Bublé sings "Baby Don't Go Outside" with a woman.
Oh yeah.
And man, I can't believe how creepy it is.
It's a terrifying song.
Yeah.
Baby, it's cold outside.
Was that
Baby, don't go outside. I gotta go away, baby. Don't go outside.
I don't think it was chivalrous. He doubles her drink. He makes her drink a double, Cat. I don't think that's chivalrous at all.
I just like
it.
She goes, hey, what's in this drink?
It's so weird because it's like back then, I guess Frank Sinatra and whoever wrote it, they were like, oh, this is an erotic, interesting song for all women in this time. But, give it like 5-6 decades, it's purely wrong. You take away the power of the woman. She wants to go outside. He doesn't care that there's a snowstorm outside. She wants to go home where it's safe. But
it's true.
Coercion.
Yeah, coercion.
Well, I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we start to wrap it up? Because we've been at this for a while now.
She's like, get off my Zoom. I need.
No. I could keep going. I'm just saying. I noticed episodes we're hitting an hour, so it's like that.
You guys remember the scene where AJ finally comes to the house and he's like inspecting it. It's like, who's staying over here? And then sees like the stuff there and calls like. Anyways, like later, he discovers the stairs, like the hidden stairs.
Yeah, the Greek.
And then like the comparison of Tessa's reaction versus AJ, who's like an opportunist, like, oh, like, is this like extra square footage I could sell to like to make more money? And him like using a measuring tape like with his butt like towards the downstairs, just measuring it. Kill me.
Yeah.
There are so many little moments where I think, oh, here's a glimmer of humanity, and then he flips it every time.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
It was such a great play on comedy for a horror movie. Because it's like that's a trope right there. You don't trust the basement, but this guy just measures it and like sees it as money. He sees the rape room with the camera and he's like, jackpot. Starts measuring like the walls and everything. But I meant to say was it cuts to like the measuring tape like being pulled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like the camera goes to like a zoom, like a fisheye zoom, and like I thought that was like really effective, like because the movie does a lot of things where like the camera is in like a fisheye lens, and you're like almost like scanning like the surroundings of Tess or like of AJ, and I think it added to like the suspense of like just of the movie.
It was really well executed. Although Although I have tape measures in the house. I don't know where he buys his tape measures. There's the world's longest tape measure. I have never
Really
seen
long.
You don't have a 30-foot tape.
Yeah.
it this big.
Is that a Jaws reference where like the tape is just like being pulled towards? Like, oh, what the heck is
Maybe.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
think
that was clever.
you're right. They did really well creating that, like, because I remember that I was watching it on the computer, but I even like covered the screen like this so I could get a better look into the darkness. I was like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
It's like if you just squint enough, you can get a whole look.
I thought I saw her in the scene where he goes to open that other door, like where he's following the bell.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then he has the door, and I swear I saw her lurking up behind him, and then he just opened the door, and I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was well done. Well done.
Sorry. Can I talk more?
Yeah, so if you have more, yeah. No.
What did you guys think of? Sorry. What did you guys think about the ending, where I felt like when AJ pushes Tess off to distract the mother, and then mother jumps down and catches her, and basically the mother sacrifices herself. I think I shed a tear in that moment because like something that I was afraid of in that movie, it made me realize like, oh, the mother, she's a victim of rape and incest, and she's super terrifying. But they put more humanity in her than we ever got for AJ,
It's true.
and it was a very, I think that's one of the reasons like why I really just love the movie, like all these twists and turns, not just in the plot, but then like the characters themselves. You realize who's good and who's bad, and the monster that's clearly bad because that's what we're meant to believe in the horror movie becomes good, but because of it like mother's nature from incest and just like having all these like issues that came up with it. And when AJ gets killed by the mother, and then you just see like Tess is like talking to the mother, and the mother is just like baby, like I just wanted to cry, man, because it's just like mother could have been just a regular person, like, but then like it didn't have to be like that for mother. And then the movie ends with Tess shooting the mother, and it's just like it's so heart wrenching, but also like a good way to end the movie, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought that was a really sad scene, and I love them. I love them for doing that.
Yeah, it was interesting that perspective too. Because then you kind of root for the mother to kill
Mhm.
AJ because he's like clearly the barbarian in that situation. Like you want him to die and pay for what he's done.
I don't know if I wanted AJ to die.
I'm okay with AJ dying.
Okay.
Root for the mother is a little bit higher than I would have said, but
No, I sympathize for the mother.
sympathize, absolutely. I mean, she did rip a guy's arm off in the scene prior, so you know.
Oh yeah.
Her perspective, that homeless
Yeah.
man kidnapped her baby.
That is true. That is a fair
That's a
point.
good headline.
I was actually so surprised at how much honor it gave its villain, and I'm using the term villain in air quotes because
Yeah.
obviously this conversation we've talked about who the real villains are, but I did not expect, I expected it to be almost a mindless beast, not a victim of trauma
The misogyny.
and misogyny.
That's fair.
I'm just
I can
kidding.
see that. Oh, you were joking? Never mind. No, I was
That's
thinking about
teasing.
that.
She's just a mindless beast, that woman. But it does
Yeah.
go, you're right, that was her mother instinct, is to protect her baby, even though
Yeah.
it wasn't true. And she was the scary part of the movie, the barbarian, but like she was exactly what you said, a victim. Like this man,
Hmm.
since the 80s it's been going on. And
Yeah, it's interesting to make a monster and then add that gender dimension to it, and then almost like it humanizes Mother, and it turned the movie over its head for me. Like I was just shocked, like, oh yeah, like I can sympathize for Mother now because like it's not her fault. Like I'm giving a mother like a pronoun like her. Like Mother was too afraid to go in Father's cave where AJ was easily able to go to because Mother was clearly afraid of the father, and it's like there's humanity in her. I mean, irredeemable, of course, because she probably killed so many people. But then it's like she's the victim of just internal misogyny, rapist. You know, like the worst parts of men that like is bred just from hate towards women, and it's very interesting, and it's something just to reflect about, like as a society, like moving forward, like how can we just make sure these things never happen between men and women.
Kill all the men. Just kidding.
Agreed. Goodbye.
Oh, you're right, and that's such a good point about her not being able to go into the guy's room. And I mean, I think I'd go a little insane if if I was underground and had to watch that breastfeeding video for however many years she was alive.
Yeah.
That was
Jeez.
so creepy.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that hairy nipple.
On that note,
The Barbarian is just all men. Because every instant in this movie a man shows up, they're always portrayed in a negative light. Like even in the beginning where she gets the call from the boyfriend, Marcus. He's not even known, but she's like, oh, this guy again. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this movie is like a feminist masterpiece in disguise. You know.
well, if I'm right, it was directed by a man. Yeah, Zach Krager, which is I think is very interesting as well. Like again, with this is going back to our conversation mentioning about men. I think it's great. We've got in the last few years we've gotten far more diversity, far more female directors taking the lead. I do find it interesting whenever a man takes a film and tries to delve into toxic masculinity. It's like they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, it was. Did he write it? I don't know if he wrote it. I'm just checking here to see. I don't know who wrote the film, but it is very interesting to me that is because in many ways, like in some ways, I would love to see this directed by a woman. See how
I hear a lot of people say that, but like maybe this is men figuring it out and taking that step to be like, we're seeing that these things are happening and we want to talk about them in a more open forum, right? Like,
yeah, it was almost like there was a scale of, I guess, toxic masculinity of like Keith. He was the best guy, and I actually loved his character. But then when I bring up like the subjective piece on like maybe the way he was very chivalrous is like the seed to all these issues. He's like at the good end of the spectrum, and then you get the father at the end, and then AJ is I don't know where you guys want AJ. Probably closer to the father, but not too close because
someone you could run into every day.
Oh, jeez. I hope not.
Just to clarify, he is the sole credited writer for the film as well. Wow. Writer and director, Zach Krager. But no, I think that too. I really think that that was the thing I thought was interesting about Men when we had that conversation, Kat, aside from all the craziness of the film. I felt like it was a man trying to figure out what's wrong with men.
Yeah.
And then that's where you have that other extreme where women are like, I don't want to be mansplained about this, and it's like, that's not what's happening. This guy's just bringing up a topic. I don't care who brings up the topic and who causes people to think, as long as they're thinking.
Yeah.
I get canceled.
Not on this show.
Yeah.
We're all good people here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun. I would love to hear, but we should start to wrap it up just for
Mhm.
time's sake. We should screen it or skip it. So, Barbarian, screen it or skip it, or stream it, I guess. Stream because it's on Disney Plus.
Screen it.
Jason, sorry, you said something. I didn't hear you.
I said screen it. Yeah, stream it.
Yeah, absolutely. Screen it, stream it. It's a shame that it wasn't in theaters longer. More people need to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciated the film. It was hard to watch, but not because it's a bad film, but because it was a good film, and it caused me to, my brain was going a mile a minute when I was watching it. It was really well done.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking about this with me. I appreciate it. Kat, thank you for coming on last minute.
Thanks for having me. This was great. I laughed because I don't know if Daniel knows, but we watched a horror movie once for Screenfish, and Steve got so scared he walked the dog halfway through. So that's why today I was like, did you walk the dog or did you actually watch the movie?
Okay, it was for The Conjuring, which is very different than this film. Okay.
Yeah.
This is more of a suspense thriller with horror elements. That's just like people being possessed. I'm like, not my thing.
Did you do your outro?
No, I haven't yet.
Oh,
I was about to.
I don't think you did.
Screen it.
Screen it.
Yeah, it's a screen it for me. It's a screen it. And so thank you all again. And a reminder for you at home, you can find us wherever podcasts are available, and you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you go to the podcast page on screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More, some small group questions to help you get the conversation started where you are about the film and try and get some of these fantastically complex issues. I believe we are back next week. I think we're talking about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but there might be a bit of a scheduling issue. But thank you all again for being on. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.